I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everybody. Board members, make sure your mics are on so people can hear you. Have roll call. Everyone is present tonight. And you have the agenda before you. Any additions or deletions?
Yeah, Gary.
Yes.
Is
TJ?
the one motion is going to have an amendment, so I don't know if that needs to be put
Okay.
on it. It's just the second part.
Right, that's going to be another motion to that. That's under C1. And that will be an amendment to that zoning ordinance. Okay, anything else? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Agenda moves forward. All right, we have a presentation tonight. We have Neil with Cambridge, and our auditors is here tonight to present our financial report.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Neil Handerbacher, I'm the CPA and Audit Manager with Cambridge and Company. We are engaged to audit the township for the year ended March 31st, 2015. If you turn to page 1 of the audit, second paragraph, this is the independent auditor's report. It tells you what management's responsibility. It'll tell you in there that these are your financial statements. We put them together as a service, but you have to take ownership of them. Our responsibility is the last paragraph, it's an opinion. And we state in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects to the Township of Salem for the year ended March 31st, 2015. So that's an unmodified opinion. That sounds kind of bad, but if there's something wrong, it would be a modified opinion. Okay? So it's a clean audit report. So a couple of highlights on the financials. Page 3, if you turn to. Financial highlights, the first bullet, the assets of the township exceeded its liabilities at the close of the year by $14,382,000. Of this amount, $9,028,298 represents unrestricted net position which may be used to meet the government's ongoing obligations. Second bullet, at the close of the current fiscal year, the township's general fund reported fund balance of $8,576,000, which increased over the previous year of $778,000. Approximately 98% of this amount, $8,371,000, is available for spending at the government's discretion. So you have some money to spend and do some things that you would like. And the final one, at the end of the current fiscal year, unassigned fund balance for the general fund was $8,371,000, or 353% of total general fund expenditures. The state of Michigan thinks you have a problem if you're 13% or below, so you do not have a problem. We got excellent cooperation. Kim does a nice job for you with your financials. You do have one blemish on your report. If you turn to page 10. Now you have to pass a budget, and that's a legal requirement. So when you don't follow that requirement, we have to say so. So capital outlay, the final budget for the general fund was $207,000, and you spent $412,000 for a variance of $205,000. Now that relates to a fire truck. Now the previous year, on the face of the balance sheet for the general fund, you had committed $420,000 to buy this fire truck, but you didn't budget $420,000 in the current year. You only budgeted around $200,000, so which created your variance. We talked to Treasury and said, their intent was clear clear? Do we have to report this variance? And they said yes. So anything would have been treasury. So, what's probably gonna happen is you are gonna get a letter from treasury. Tell them that in your response that you committed funds in the previous year, $420,000. You just didn't follow through and budget that amount. So, and then they said, well, it can go away. So that's on page 10, where we highlight that fact. We also, you don't have to do this, but on page 29, we highlight that fact again, that you overspent your budget. So that was the only area where you did overspend it. Every other area looked good. So.
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
Just to address that.
Yep.
You know, we had the same kind of problem last year on a couple other issues. One was the purchase of the property, and the second was our attorney fees, I believe it was. I believe we were, if I recall right, I believe it was 30-some thousand over budgeting. My question to you as the auditor is, if we don't get the bills in here on time, especially as we did with not to put the attorney on the spot here tonight, but if, you know, how should that be handled?
Well, you leave the books open, it's recommended 60 days. So if you get invoices in April and May, which relate back to this previous fiscal year, you accrue those amounts. Even though you didn't cut a check and pay cash, you can still accrue those amounts. If you know of something and you still don't have the bill, you still can do a management estimate and accrue that amount. So let's say the attorney didn't get his bills in on time. It is, we come out here for the audit, he's on, you know, there's $50,000 up, we know he's gonna bill us, we can make an estimate for $50,000. So you can always make that management estimate.
Even after March 31st?
Yes. And because typically we don't come out for the audit until the 60 days are done, and then we start to deal with them. So, you know, it seems pretty good for the most part.
Right. But the intent is like buying the fire truck. We knew it was $400-some odd thousand. In fact, if we paid it all at one time, didn't we receive another discount, 10% discount. So we had budgeted $250,000, and it was for something.
Well, from what I understand, the previous auditors, they said when you set money aside in a budget for the fire truck for a specific purpose, which was done. What we didn't do this year is what we found out later on, is even though that money was set aside in those previous years, they have to be set aside again in this year's, the year that you actually make the expenditure. Right.
So what you did the previous year, you committed the funds.
Yes.
You just didn't budget enough in the year where that you actually paid all those funds.
Yeah, because I guess that was some of the Gadsby rule, because we were not aware of that situation, being that Kim was dealing with Raymond, and she was not aware that we had to budget the additional amount, which we had budgeted prior. We thought it was already taken care of.
When you say budgeted prior, that's not really a budget.
Well, it's not budget,
That's
it's set
committing.
aside, right? It was, the money was set aside in the account.
So your thinking was you already did it.
Yeah.
Okay, but you didn't go the whole 9 yards on it.
So the red flag that would come up when this happens is that it's not properly budgeted and it needed to be amended.
Correct. So
It's pretty simple.
the 7 of you each month should be getting a revenue and expenditure compared to budget report. You know, you don't have to study it, but you should at least glance through there and say, you know, something's not right here, let's fix this. Any other questions?
Well, going back to Mr. Whitaker's question about attorney bills, just to use that as an example.
Let's not use it. In defense of the attorney, I pointed out it was almost 20% under budget for this financial statement.
Yes, you were, and we appreciate that. You were not 20%.
But the accrual, even if we left the books open 60 days, do we need to technically amend the budget before the end of the fiscal year?
Yeah, the budget, the state's pretty clear, and any budget amendments have to be made by March 31st.
So again, it's just a management estimate of
Right.
what we think could be coming coming in, we still need to amend the budget by the end of the fiscal year. We have the liberty of approving bills for a period of time.
Yeah, but wonder if we don't know.
What if
I
Mr.
mean,
Plato
we were begging Mr. Plato to send the
plays
bills.
magician?
We needed the bills.
I'm certain if you place a phone call,
All right.
it will tell you.
Either that or get a new attorney. So
Oh,
I
no,
mean, I don't know
no.
what else to do. I mean, we gotta do something, so. But no, it's pretty simple. I mean, unless I'm missing something, I don't understand why, other than that March 31st, it becomes difficult. If you don't have the bills in and don't know what they are, we're gonna have a problem. So, all right. Any other questions on that subject? Okay. Any other questions for the auditor?
Just one. I just wanted to clarify, on page 26 on capital assets, it says that it would be a cost of $1,000 and a useful life in excess of 2 years. I thought we had amended our budget based on, changed our policy based on the previous auditor's recommendations. We had increased it to $5,000. Am I mistaken on that?
I had thought we did too, but I'll have to check it out.
Okay, and we can make that change before we submit it.
Okay, so if we can confirm to you that it was modified to 5, you can tweak
And
that.
5,000 is typical?
Yeah, that's.
So you just don't get a lot of small things on there that you have to keep track of for appreciation.
Okay, anything else? Thanks, Neil.
All right, thanks. Have a good night.
Appreciate it. Neil, before you leave, are there any, in case our residents have any questions about the audit or anything? I'd like to give you that opportunity, I should have said that.
The state of Michigan requires that the audit be submitted to Treasury within 6 months. So we're gonna make this one change on the $1,000. You can go out to Treasury's website and you can see this audit, or going back to 2003 and any other audit in the state of Michigan. So those things are available. There's no need to send in FOIAs or things like that. It's public information, so.
All right.
Question, what was your level of materiality?
Usually, well, depends how big the balance sheet was, and I didn't make that calculation as part of the audit.
Do you
So
think it was
understand
over
that.
or under $20,000?
I would say it's over. And could be because they got significant cash and an investment position.
But you don't know the exact amount?
No, we can forward that to the township, and, yeah, because that's part of our planning process, so.
Okay, anything else? Okay, thanks, Neil.
All right, you're welcome.
Okay, we're down to public comment.
Gary, when they tore the barns down on Salem Road, you mentioned that at a meeting prior to that they're gonna save all the beams and that. Have they done that
Yeah, we're still there.
on the property?
Yes.
Okay.
Bonnie?
First, I'd like to thank you for getting the rattle out of the speakers
Thank you.
when you did all the wiring back there and everything. But I'd like to caution you all, at the planning commission meeting, we had a great big feedback problem because the people that were sitting up there had desktop laptops and stuff, and they had their microphones and speakers not muted, and they hit this system, and it like to blow the roof off of this place. It was really squeaky for a few minutes. So if you guys up there and the people in here would turn their phones off and their machines mute their sounds, we won't get that again.
Gary, buy your set of earplugs.
Thanks, Bonnie. Okay, anyone else? Okay, If not, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Mr. Wesley.
I move that Salem Township approve the following consent agenda items. The minutes of August 11th, 2015, regular meeting of the Board of Trustees. B, the disbursements for August out of the general fund. The July check roster had $87,688.18. These were checks $25,559 to $25,600. Disbursements out of the escrow fund, $2,075. These were checks 1608 through 1611. We had an August payroll of $39,423.62, paying Paycor $182.50 to do that. Sewer fund disbursements of $7,061.01. These were checks 1955 and 1956. We also have invoices for September out of the general fund to pay $142,855.30. The sewer fund, $9,172.71, and out of the escrow fund, we have invoices for $3,880. So do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any other questions on the consent agenda? Okay, then, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's passed. Down to 8 business items. Appointments to the Land Preservation and Conservation Board. I move that Salem Township approve the following appointments to the Salem Township Land Preservation and Conservation Board for a 2-year term beginning August 1st, 2015, ending 7/31/2017. Steve Schaefer, Carl Drummond, Daniel McGarry, who's on the Planning Commission, is a Planning Commission member. Do I have a second on this?
I'll second it.
Mr. DeLuca, any questions? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is passed. Next on the agenda is a motion for a property lease agreement. I move that Salem Township extend a 1-year lease between Dennis Catese Farms LLC and Salem Township for the Salem Farm Preserve. Legal counsel, Mr. Ed Plato, will draft a new lease agreement which will be reviewed by the board at the October meeting. Have a second on that?
I'll second.
All right, John. Just a little information on this. Mr. Batiste has agreed at our last preservation board meeting that we had. We talked about a new parking lot that needs to be put in. Ron was also some foundation that was still there left by the Holloway farm that had been taken down years ago that needed to be taken out, and also creating the trails and paths that have been kind of designated, and clean up some of the other property just so that'd be just west of it that he was going to do at this agreement at the same price at I believe it was $126.50 per acre, which is about a revenue of about $18,000 what it comes out to be. Farming hasn't been that good as far as the crops have been, and I think that's a good price. And for him to be able to do some of that work for us and still pay us that amount, I think it's a good deal to do. Any other questions about it? You're looking at me like you got a question.
Just my look tonight, Mr.
All right, all right. All right, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is passed. Next on the agenda is a motion to approve the sign project for the Salem Farm Preserve. I move that Salem Township approve the sign project throughout the Salem Farm Preserve. This project will follow the bid for the purchase between $2,500 and $10,000 according to section 8A in the policy manual. Have a second on this?
I'll second.
Wensley seconds it. Just a little bit of information about this. The park, the preserve has, you know how many money's in that fund? We did set an amount of money. I think there's, I can't remember how much money's in there, but the usage for that would come out, which I don't believe it's gonna be nowhere near 10,000, but these signs will be on Salem Road by the entrance to the driveway, and then also another one on Brookville, where the trail will be coming off of Brookville. There will be no parking lots along Brookville, just the parking lot on Salem Road.
So we're envisioning 2 signs at this point?
Correct. One double-sided, and then one, I believe, single, right? Is that right, Sue? Maybe one a little bit smaller than the other. Okay, any other?
I'm not sure about the exact one, but
I know there's plenty of money in here for it, but we'll get the bids and get it back to us at the next meeting. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's passed. And the last to do with the park is creating an ordinance. I move that Salem Township approve that the board begin discussions with legal counsel and the Land Preservation Conservation Board and other experts to create an official ordinance for rules and regulations of the Salem Farm Preserve and the enforcement of such an ordinance. We have found that many things that go on in the township that people get disturbed about certain things that go on in certain places. What we're told is that if you do create an ordinance, as far as the rules and regulations of the park that have been created, that if you put them in an ordinance, that it's much more enforceable if there is people that are not abiding by the rules. So I think also in the ordinance will be talked about the property, if it ever was to be sold or or the people, just that kind of language I think needs to be created. So I can have a second on this?
I'll second it.
Okay, Reggie? Any other questions on this? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, down the next item is the motion to approve the county drain assessments. Mr. Converse.
Mr. Supervisor, I move the township approve the resolutions 2015-09-841, authorizing the township to pay the property owner's share of the county drain assessments in the amount not to exceed $16,000.
We have a second on this?
I'll second.
DJ?
This has been, historically, we are one of the only townships in the county that continue to do this, but we feel that keeping the flooding and stuff under control benefits everybody, and therefore that's one of the reasons why we have done it in the past and look forward to doing it in the future.
Anything else? Mr. Trent?
A couple questions, Mr. Supervisor. Dale, I know last year or the year before, we had a lot of discussion about one of the drains in particular and, the township's responsibility toward that project. Do you have any insights on specific work that was done on any of these drains, particularly the one that was the most expensive?
I can comment on that. I was at the meetings for this. I was county commissioner. You're talking about the Underhill, I didn't even understand about the Underhill drain. Is that the one you're referring to?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that portion there, they decided to do between Oakland County and Washtenaw County, the drain that follows up by Tower Road and 8 Mile. It's a huge problem. The problem is that Griswold, if you've gone by there, you can see where they're paving that. They decided to, the Oakland County side, take the drainage from that road and run it down east on 8 Mile on the north side, and then put a culvert under 8 Mile onto the Washtenaw County side, right near Tower Road, and put it into a wetland over there, which it really didn't make sense what they did. But that was permitted by Oakland County Road Commission and also Washington County Road Commission. Then from there, it falls into the Drain Commissioner's hand, and that's why all the residents were here that one night with the complaints of what was going on there. So I've been going to the meetings with the neighbors and at the county, and they did one project to go through and walk the grounds. It basically just, I mean, just picture Tower Road and 8 Mile goes all the way down to almost like a, I want to say not a bridge, but it's like a bridge, or a culvert and a bridge, almost till you get about to where Kroger is. And then it goes back over on the Oakland County line. So it literally comes out of Oakland County, comes across 8 Mile, comes behind all these people's houses and back of their houses, and then runs down back over 8 Mile by Kroger and goes back over on the Oakland County side. Which the, you know, if you, I think anybody would look at it and say, why didn't they just go down 8 Mile to that, to where it was gonna end up, instead of causing more water. But what they found at one of the residents years ago that it's built there, is they diverted that drain around his house. And now they're saying to bring it back up to code, it's gonna cost $200,000-300,000 to bring it back up and to flow properly in front of this guy's house after it's all landscaped, so there's a battle there. But they did go through and try to clean out as much as they could to stop any flow, so. That's as far as we've gotten on this. But the next thing is gonna be this big project, but I'm sure that nobody's gonna go for that.
They're moving west.
That's where we're at.
I appreciate that insight, Mr. Supervisor. Do you know any information about the Nelson drain? What was involved there?
No, I don't even know where the Nelson drain is. Where's the Nelson drain? Anybody know?
Furman should know.
Herman?
Yes.
Nelson drain, you know where that is?
Boy, what?
Nelson drain.
Yes.
Where is it?
And where I know where it's at is on Brookville Road, just down from Weed Road.
I've seen the Senate.
All right. Yeah, I don't.
Nelson's lived in a house on the north side. That was a Nelson farm.
Okay. Yeah. Well, back to this Underhill drainage. It's a big problem. It's coming from the manufactured home park, the old one on 8 Mile there. All their drainage is all coming over 8 Mile and onto this side, going into this Underhill drain, so there's a lot of water there.
Eric, can I ask a question about this? The water comes across 8 Mile to the south and goes back to the north. And they came from the west. Was there any thoughts of staying on their own side and just going west?
The only reason I could find out from Oakland County is because of the cost. It was cheaper to go under 8 Mile and go that route than going straight down, going west on 8 Mile.
That would be what, half a mile, quarter of a mile or something?
Yeah, it was gonna cost probably a couple $100,000 more, so they took the cheapest route.
Put a culvert down the road and dump to the next one.
But the Underhill drain hadn't been touched in, 60 years, they said. Even the drain commissioner
Well, they'd
told
have to fix the drain to get it back across anyway, I mean.
Yeah, Well, it's flowing, I mean, you can go out there and stand along 8 Mile, you see it flowing. But there's a lot of debris in it, but by diverting it the way somebody did years ago has caused the problem. And that's why the people on 8 Mile and Tower are just, their land is just becoming wetter and wetter. And now they're adding more to it by sending the Griswold drainage there, so then that's the concern.
Your Nelson Drain parallels M14 to Primary.
Okay.
North side.
Well, we can sure get hold of Evan Pratt, and he can give us any of this information.
One last comment, Mr. Supervisor. In looking at our revenue expenditure report, we budgeted $15,000 for county drains this year. With our contribution and picking up the property owner's portion, that's gonna put us close to 24K, not close to 25. And so, this particular cost center is going to have to be amended in the near future anyway because of all of the building department activity and the salaries we're paying our inspectors. So, we should make note of that.
Why didn't you do that on the fire truck? Just teasing, just teasing. Just teasing. All right, note made. Okay, any other questions on this? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're down to planning and zoning. And we'll turn it over to TJ.
I move that Salem Township approve adoption of the attached rezoning application 14-006 to zoning ordinance 2015-09-08-02 as recommended by the Planning Commission, detailed in the approved minutes of the Planning Commission dated 2/23/2015, 3/16/2015, and 8/17/2015, including copies of the letters of opposition, the Township Planner's report, and a copy of the public hearing ad including the list of properties proposed for rezoning. And that's second.
Second on that?
I'll second it.
Mr. Winsley? If I may, Ronnie, would you like to just make a few comments on this, what this is about? Just so we can get some, make sure I understand it, but everybody can understand.
Sure, this part that's before you tonight is proposed rezoning of some properties into the new semi-public services district. This is a zoning district that we added to the zoning ordinance with the last update. Its primary purpose is to provide a zoning district where churches are allowed without special use approval, without the need for a public hearing process to establish a new church. That the goal is to be consistent with federal land use law, the Religious Land Uses and Institutionalized Persons Act, which limits our ability to require a special use permit for churches. It also provides a location for facilities like the Township Hall, park, and the school property, and some other public uses, and similar types of businesses. Also, for example, one of the items that's proposed in this district is the Jarvis Stone School property. All those types of facilities are being moved into this district where no special use permit is required, and it's a simpler process for them to get approval on changes they propose.
Okay, and then while you're up there, if you can add about what the amendments are on this that we need to make a motion on also.
Right. Yeah, the second part of your actions tonight came out of Planning Commission's review of this proposed rezoning. We received comments in particular from the board of directors for the Stone School property that expressed a concern that the zoning district, the list of permitted uses in the district, didn't include private recreation facilities. It included public recreation facilities, but not private. And we we did that because typically, most of the properties are either publicly owned or public use. Their concern was that they often hold member-only events. Of course, the school has a playground area, has even some playground equipment in it. But they do have member-only events there that they felt might not be allowed under this new zoning classification. When we reviewed it, we felt, and we provided a letter to them indicating that we believe they fit within existing permitted uses that are in the district, but also suggested that there would be value in considering amendment, a text amendment to the PSP zone district, simply to add private recreation facilities as a use that's allowed in that district. And so that will be the second item you're looking at tonight, is that text amendment, which the Planning Commission did recommend for approval as well.
Any questions to the planner?
I have one. Can you explain why the 235 acres that the township has as part of the farm preserve is not included in the list of properties for this special zone classification?
That's a great question. It was not included in this list primarily because it's being farmed, and the ag district farming is allowed use. The PSP district farming is not allowed use. Now under zoning, anytime you rezone a property, if you zone a property out, in this case, we rezone the property and farming is no longer allowed use in the new district, the farming activities are still grandfathered in. They're considered legal non-conforming use. But under the circumstances, there didn't seem to be a need to make the change. What's being proposed with the trails and such is also allowed in the ag district. So there was no need to include it. But also at the time that we started this process, which goes back now, it really started late last year with the Planning Commission, that property was still essentially, there was not a firm plan essentially for the future use of that property other than farming. So we didn't include it for that reason. It could be at some point in the future rezoned into that classification. But right now, especially while farming continues on it, we recommended we simply leave it in the ag district.
Rodney, you mentioned in that if the present farmer was to, a new farmer was to take over the lease, is this grandfathered to farming in general, or farming to a particular individual, or any land that goes out can't come back? Could you explain a little bit
That's
what
great.
the grandfathering really entails?
That's a great question. The grandfathering or legal non-conforming status, if that property were to be included in the rezoning, the BSB district, and farming became a legal non-conforming use, that classification runs with the land. So it doesn't matter who's leasing the property, it doesn't matter even if you choose to leave the land fallow for a year or two, it's still an agricultural production, intended for agricultural production. And as long as that use is not abandoned, essentially abandoning would be ending the farming activity and converting that property to something else, trails or other activities, recreation activities. Until that use is abandoned, it would continue to have that grandfathered or legal non-conforming status, no matter who was the farmer involved.
Any other questions? Okay. Thanks, Brian.
You're welcome.
Okay then, so we have this first, more or less changing the zoning map on these properties that we have a second on, and I think we should vote on. All those in favor of this zoning approval, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is passed. Then if I might make a motion to have the same description here, only consider amending the zoning ordinance to allow
Yeah, Eric?
this.
She actually had it.
Oh, you got it, all right.
I got it.
You already got your way ahead of me.
Friday gave it to me.
Oh.
I move that Salem Township approve the adoption of the attached text amendment application 15-003 to zoning ordinance 2015-09-08-02 as recommended by the Planning Commission, detailed in the approved minutes of the Planning Commission dated 8/17/2015, including the Township Planner's report and a copy of the public hearing ad. Do I have a second?
I'll second that again.
Very good. Any other discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion's passed. Okay, so we're down to fire department?
Supervisor Whitaker,
Yes.
I think what you just voted on was the motion to amend the original motion.
Right.
So now you have to vote on the main motion, which incorporates the amendment.
No, there were two separate resolutions.
There were two separate resolutions?
Two separate, that's what we did.
Yeah.
Okay, for a second resolution.
What we call it a motion to amend.
That was a motion to amend the zoning ordinance. It's an ordinance.
The motion to pass a resolution to amend the zoning ordinance.
Well, it's a resolution to pass an amendatory ordinance to the zoning ordinance. That's what okay. There are two separate resolutions, two separate ordinances.
As long as that's clear, that we need to take two separate motions to amend the zoning map. Got it, okay.
Okay?
Scared me when we talked,
All right.
when we referred to it as a motion to amend.
All right. Thanks, Ed. Okay, so we're down to the fire department. Hiring of the fire department. Mr. Rockwell?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. We had a firefighter submit an application earlier, a couple, 3-4 months ago, for being on the fire department, Aaron Kimler. On August 5th, we had a review of his application with 2 of the board trustees and reviewed the application, which all of you guys have a copy of, as well as some of the questions that were outside the application as far as history and stuff. Just as a little bit of background, I want to say that about a year, 2 years ago, Aaron came to us and said, hey, we want to join the fire department. I said, you know, Aaron, I'd like to bring you on board, but we've got qualified candidates already, and we really can't submit your application to go forward because we have all these qualified candidates. And Aaron said to me, how about I go to school, I get the qualifications, and reapply, would you consider me at that time? True to his word, out of his own pocket, he went through firefighter 1 and 2 and passed it, went to EMT school, passed that, got all the certificates, came back to us today and said, will you hire me now? So I think that speaks volumes of the candidate that wants to be on this department, is willing to put his own pocket money in front, his own time and effort to make this application. Was interviewed, reviewed by Dale and David, myself, and I thought that he was an ideal candidate. He lives in Township, young man, got good back, expected him to be here for a while. And again, I think we're very fortunate he's coming to us today with all of his qualifications, and he sat in some of the basic training already, so it would be very easy for him to get up to speed. So therefore, I'm making the recommendation to the board that you consider hiring Aaron Kimler as a firefighter for Salem Township. Is there any questions anybody has that I could answer or expound on?
I think one of the notes is that he is usually available during the day.
Correct, and that's one of the nice things, that he is available during the day and sometimes at the nighttime. Again, that's our most challenging time because most of our firefighters have a day job, and so being able to fill in during the day and after hours, again, you can see his encouragement by the fact that he took the classes on his own, so I expect great participation from him.
Any other questions for the chief? Mr. Trent?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. To that end, I move that Salem Township approve the hiring of Aaron Kimler to the position of Salem Township firefighter, subject to the successful completion of a physical examination, driving record and background investigation, criminal record check, and verification of references.
second that.
Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
All right, down to the reports been submitted. And Mr. Morocco, chief.
Thank you, sir. I got the report from HVA late, so wasn't able to make it into your board packet, so I'll just keep it brief. We had 28 calls for service in August. Most of those were medical. Most notably, again, our run time or response time on scene was less than 7 minutes, 6 minutes and 38 seconds by HVA's time. And we had one structure fire assist to Northfield Township. And that was, again, a challenge. One of the things that we see here in our township is long driveways, very narrow road to get to it, and a very long driveway. We assisted by doing over 1,000 feet of hose relay to get water to the site, put the house out. And I think it was on MLive if you want to see some of the pictures. Most notable, last month or just most recently, we had a motor vehicle accident on Curry Road just north of 5 Mile. The occupants were not seat belted, which resulted in the ejection of one patient, which landed in the tree's brushes, and the second patient being pinned into the car. A young couple, we fully believe that the injuries would have been a lot less severe had they worn their seat belts. Thankfully, both of them look like they're going to survive the accident. Or a couple more things at 7 Mile and Tower, we've been having a number of motorcycle accidents there. We found that mostly on the outside shoulder, there's a lot of gravel there. Got some uneven pavement. We've had, I believe, at least 3 accidents down there. We took some action ourselves, basically shoveled off the shoulder to get some of that pea gravel away, because the motorcycle's coming around that edge, barely coming around the outside there, hit that, and then lose control. And then lastly, the board's mentioned on 8 Mile, they are working on 8 Mile near the Tower Griswold area. That's down to 1 lane at times, and traffic can be a challenge in there. You'll see the resurfacing, so please have some patience. It's a pretty high traffic area. So that's all I have. Does the board have any questions for me?
I think we're all set. Okay, thank you, Jim. Washington County Law Enforcement's been submitted. Board discussion. The fire department contract is, any comments on that, people on the committee?
Yes, Mr. Supervisor, we'd like to take this opportunity to apprise the board that we, at this juncture, have pretty much a tentative agreement reached with the union. We're on the final stages of brushing up some verbiage on a couple of the articles that have been amended. We've had very good dialogue with the union president and the NAF official that's been negotiating on their behalf. And there's a number of changes and modifications from the previous contract. The board will be receiving a clean copy of that contract in the very near future for your review. Our intent is to sit down with you in closed session next month prior to our regular 7 o'clock meeting so that we can apprise you of all of those modifications and changes. We anticipate the union will be reviewing the contract in the very near future, and then it will come to the board for ratification in October. There is one issue that we became aware of as we were discussing the upcoming wage salary increases that were being negotiated. And much to our dismay, we discovered that 2 years ago, we inadvertently omitted a contractual pay raise to the fire department. And as a result of that, there's been a cumulative effect that has come into play. And Reggie, if you would pass that down. We have for your review tonight what the financial consequences of that omission are. And in going back and looking at the minutes from that time period, trying to understand how did this oversight occur, what appears to have happened, and this is purely conjecture on my part, is that you'll recall that at the beginning of 2013, right after this board came into being, we made a administrative decision to modify the work schedules of some of our staff so that essentially everybody was part-time. And we modified the pay rates of everybody and made them effective January 1st of 2013. So typically, we would be reviewing pay increases and all of that thing at the beginning of the fiscal year in April. Well, because of our decision at the beginning of the year, we had arbitrarily said that those pay changes would continue on until April of 2014. So when April 2013 came along, everything was status quo. There were no pay increases for elected officials and for staff because the changes had already been modified on January 1st. And so life went on and nobody caught it. And then the 2% pay raise took effect the following year. And then here we are, with 2 years of that impact. So you can see that for 2013, 2014, Deputy Clerk Taggart has calculated what each firefighter would be owed at this point. And after having our internal discussion as a negotiating team, we determined that the best course of action is, now that we've become aware of this issue, and we actually found out about it a week ago Friday, that we should make amends and retroactively pay the firefighters for the amounts that they're owed and adjust their pay accordingly to what it should be, which would be $24.59. The firefighters have been, level 4, have been paid $24.10 for this past year. So we should move forward. Our recommendation is that we as a board should modify their pay rate to the contractual arrangements and increase their paycheck
So-
here at the end of September.
So the total is, what's the total?
7,700 and change.
All right. So these are just carried across.
Right, yeah, she calculated what the increase would be for 2013 and 2014.
I agree.
So make a motion then?
I think
Yeah.
to,
This would
make
be
it clear.
taken care of immediately or at the next pay run?
At the end of September here with the next payroll.
All right.
And there may be some firefighters who are no longer employed by the township who have moved on. We should go back and look at the consequences for them and issue them a check accordingly. And then Dell, she can calculate what the change would be for this fiscal year, because there's this fiscal year as well that would need to be taken into account.
Okay, so this page right here just has 2013 and 14.
Exactly.
So we'll also have to do 15.
Right, we don't know what that number is at this juncture. We asked her to calculate what we had for past years. And the union president and the math representative are aware of this oversight and knew that we were planning on bringing it forward.
All right. All right. So let's make a motion to modify the fire department pay increases at the next pay date, which is September 30th, following the contractual agreements. When was that contractual agreement first started? Do you remember the dates of that initial one? Was it 2011?
2011, I believe around
This contractual agreement was a 4-year.
Correct, and we missed it, I believe, 2012, is it 2012 or 13?
13 was the start.
2013.
Oversight.
It's a 3-year contract, we missed it 2012.
Well, 4-year contract. First year was no increase.
Right.
The next year was 1%, which they received, and then we had the oversight. So basically, we should direct staff to retroactively pay firefighters commencing April 1st, 2013.
I'll have Kim go back and look into that.
We've already talked to her, so
Okay.
the first pay raise that was obligated by contract, we met that obligation. It's the second pay raise that was due that was missed.
All right, so, David, did you want to you wanted to be the one to make the motion?
Sure, I'd be happy to.
And I'll second it.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, now we're down to the new lawsuit. Mr. Plato.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Actually, I'd like to update the board and the residents on 3 lawsuits pending against the township, the only 3 lawsuits pending against the township. First one was the lawsuit filed by firefighter Ed Signer. It was in the U.S. District Court. That case proceeded on through discovery phase, a number of depositions taken. Case was filed against the township and the former board members and Chief Rockwell. After a motion was filed for summary disposition, it was heard by Judge Linda Parker. She determined that Mr. Signer did not have sufficient evidence to make a case against any of the defendants and has dismissed that case in its entirety. That case there's now been a notice of appeal filed. It looks like they are going to pursue an appeal in the U.S. Court of Appeals. However, based upon the fact that Judge Parker is a fairly liberal judge and doesn't grant many motions for summary judgment, I doubt that there would be much chance of prevailing on appeal. So that appeal, I expect, will be, the judgment of the trial court will be affirmed. The second update is on the Salem Springs versus Salem Township case. That's the case in which Salem Springs challenged the referendum election. If you'll recall, in the trial court, the Washington Circuit Court agreed with Salem Springs and held that the petitions had not been timely filed for the referendum election, and that the election should be set aside. The Norm Klein Jr. and Sr. and the Concerned Citizens of Salem appealed that decision, and oral arguments were heard in the Michigan Court of Appeals a week ago today. There's been no decision rendered on that appeal. However, based upon the comments made by the 3 judges, it appears that they are seriously questioning whether Salem Springs LLC has sufficient standing to file that claim, because they don't own any property in the township, nor do they vote or pay taxes in the township. So they were asking a number of questions of Salem Springs Council as to why they should have standing and be considered a citizen of Washtenaw County in order to bring that suit to set aside the election. So I will apprise the board as soon as we get that decision from the Court of Appeals, which could be any day or it could be 6 months from now. It's up to the Court of Appeals. The third lawsuit was the day after the Signer case was dismissed, we received a new lawsuit filed by Carol Diogio and her husband Harry against the township and all the current board members, with the exception of Trustee DeLuca, who escaped that, although it does name former trustee Mary Beth Schmidt. And basically it appears to allege a claim of some sort of a constructive discharge, and that she felt the working conditions were intolerable, such that she had to quit her position. However, there's been, to my knowledge, no formal resignation submitted by Ms. Diogio to the township, and as far as I know, her job is still active. But that's the claim. That case has been Municipal Risk Management Authority. They will be retaining defense counsel to defend the township and the trustees in that case. And that will proceed along in the U.S. District Court as did the Signer case, hopefully with the same result. I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody has.
So that was a district court filing, U.S. district?
U.S. District Court, yeah.
Question about the Salem Springs. They're saying that the Salem Springs does not own the land? Is that what they were saying, that they don't own the land in the township?
Well, initially, Salem, an entity called Salem Springs LLC did own the property. For reasons unknown to us, at some point, this property was transferred from Salem Springs LLC to an entity called Salem Springs Owner LLC, which is a legally separate, different corporation. But the complaint in the case was never amended to reflect that there was a new plaintiff, that Salem Springs Owner was now a plaintiff in the case. So that was the whole issue of whether or not they actually have standing. Because Salem Springs LLC definitely does own property in the township and in the county. But they sold that property or transferred it to Salem Springs Owner. So at that point, Salem Springs LLC no longer did own the property. So it's, I'm not making any accusations, but the matter of shifting around these LLCs maybe has worked to the detriment of Salem Springs in the case.
Hey, any other questions?
Hey, Gary?
Yep.
On that referendum, they claim it was turned in late, Ed.
Yes.
Has anybody ever pinpointed the reason it was turned into Washington County late? Has anybody ever put a pinpoint on that?
It wasn't turned into county late. What the claim was that the petitions weren't filed with the township on time. Under the Zoning Enabling Act, the petitions have to be filed within 30 days of the date the zoning amendment is published. And there were a number of publications in the paper, and the petitions were not filed until 30 days after the last publication. The trial court, the Washtenaw Circuit Court, had held that they should have been filed within 30 days of the first publication, which I think was May 20th, 2012, and therefore they were filed late. Now, the Court of Appeals, quite candidly, asked the parties not to address that issue, so they've already made up their mind on that issue, and told Mr. Carson that they did not want to hear any discussion of the notice argument. They only wanted to address the standing argument.
All right. So let's just move on down to any general township updates. There really isn't many, unless anybody else has anything else to share.
Just an inquiry. I know there's been some ongoing work behind the scenes on trying to address some of the computer phone issues. Is there still problems that need to be addressed, either with some of our vendors or to try to take care of that problem once and for all? And I don't know if any of the other trustees are having issues trying to retrieve emails remotely, but I am still plagued by trying to accomplish that. And I'm having to come on site to review my emails. I cannot review them off site. And I'm just wondering, is this an issue for fellow trustees who are trying to get emails from home or some other location?
About 3 weeks ago, I had an issue trying to get on, but
John, can't hear you.
about 3 weeks ago, I had an issue getting on, but that's been resolved.
There was definitely a problem. I had it for a long time, but I found that if you went into email direct, it was a TDS. And well, whatever, that's when I had a real issue, right? But then just changing, whenever they changed it again, it was a real problem. But
tech support who helped me until the problem got solved and then I could get it on my phone.
Could I also say, I've had emails where I've replied, people haven't gotten, so people send me an email, and you didn't get a reply. We had a period of time that we had problems with their emails. So, yeah, so it just wasn't me, so if you had emails, but you didn't get replies from us, it could have been during that period that people sent emails and we replied and they didn't go anywhere.
Is that all right? All right. Okay, so we're down to public comment.
Hey Gary, Chief Rockwell mentioned 7 Mile and Tower Road.
Yep.
You guys spend a lot of money on these roads. You ought to go back and visit that intersection and force the county to change it somehow. I mean, it's treacherous on that one. I travel it every day of the week, and it's a real mess. I mean, you want to spend money on the roads, spend it the right way, and fix that intersection.
That really needs to be redone, the whole road there.
It's a mess.
Well, next year's budget, we should be able to put a ton of money into the road, so maybe that's one we should really address.
Well, go look at it, Gary.
On Sunday, we were driving by and a bunch of motorcycles came by and we saw one hit the sign and the guy flew right into the bushes. We called 911.
Did you stop?
Yeah.
I thought you might be busy calling 911.
No, we stopped.
Did you give him CPR?
He wasn't that injured that
Yeah,
much,
You
unfortunately.
don't really have a signpost shoved on his throat.
I haven't.
Yeah,
The signpost didn't win, that's for sure.
I'm still bugging about the Brookville Road and Pontiac Trail. Okay, the guy in the corner there is apparently letting the grass, the bushes and the trees grow up to form some sort of a berm to hide what he's got in his backyard or something. But that is really treacherous. You have to, you can't even pull out on there. You try getting out there at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you're gonna get T-boned. You just cannot see to the south. The
We,
county needs to clean that whole thing off.
We reported that, the other issue up at Curtis,
Yeah.
another issue there, there's another issue at Brookville and,
The south side of
Curtis.
South Brookville. Yeah, it's terrible. I mean, there's gonna be somebody get T-boned and killed there, because they come around that curve heading from North Territorial 60 miles an hour.
I know what you're talking about.
Huh? Yeah.
Regards to Curtis, ditching on Curtis Road, is that?
yeah, that
still-
isn't done.
It's not, I only see
There's a
one
lot.
stake at one culvert south of Ascenorians. There's 2 more culverts to the north of that, just for now. But they haven't done anything yet.
Yeah. They started a project on Napier that they've been promising for 2 years, and they did, maybe 60, 70 feet of it and left, and it's still, you know. I think the big thing is the monies that we've allotted, I think we addressed it today, we still haven't seen some of that work being done yet. So. And I don't know if you've been on 7 and Tower on that road. The ditches are so deep there, we're gonna have some big issues in the wintertime there, that right on Tower Road there. So they're supposed to come and kind of bring that down. They did bring a new culvert in, but the people can't even get to their mailbox. So we spent, 36 grand, I think, towards that project, 37?
Definitely raise the road up.
How much was it? 137?
Actually, 140. It's not the road.
140.
Actually, it's not the road right now, it's the intersection that you guys
Yeah,
got
but it's
problems with.
still, the repair work that they did on trying to bring the road up the thing is, it's like you fall off the
Well,
side.
you should quit shaking hands with them and make them do it.
Well, maybe I need you to come out there and help me.
I would help you do it,
Well,
just let me know.
Come on, let's do
You
it.
know,
We'll get Glenn too.
they'll get Glenn to help us.
That's who can really help. We'll get Glenn out there. Okay, anything else from anybody? Yes, Joanne.
with the audit this year, there's irregularities in the legal expenses again this year. It's happened every year for the last 3 years. In the April board packet, the printed year-end budget, total legal fees were $59,439.21. In April, Mr. Plato was paid $22,974.26 for October through December of 2014, which is in the auditor's version of the year-end budget. In June, Mr. Plato was paid $23,046.48 from January through March of 2015, which brings the total legal expenses, contrary to what you said, over budget, not under budget. This amount should be in last year's, this $23,000 should be in last year's budget, but does not show up in the audit. Okay, audit said $82,000. Auditors can only account for what they're given. This $23,046 check is nowhere. It's not in year-to-date totals, it's not in the audit. So my question to you, Mr. Wensley, is where was this $23,000 put? It's not anywhere that I can find. Trustees just approved the budget. Okay, you approved a budget that was wrong. There's $23,000 missing and not one of you caught it. So, Mr. Plato, you've never, prior to November of 2012, you were never late with a bill. Okay, you were paid right up to the minute. You were not late with bills. This only started in November of 2012. For you to be 6 to 8 months behind in billing, I wish all attorneys were that far behind. It's not normal for an attorney to be 6 to 8 months behind. You've not been paid for anything since March.
I agree.
Okay.
But that's not a reflection of the township, that's a reflection on me.
Well, then something has happened since November of 2012 because your bills were always on time prior to that. So for the third year in a row, the legal budget has been over, and yet it's not reflected in anything. It's adjusted after the fact, and this year it wasn't even adjusted after the fact. A trustee has two responsibilities, two fiduciary responsibilities. The first is the most important, and that is oversight. The second is to vote on the financial issues of the township. At the last board meeting, this board voted unanimously to write off 4 years of personal property taxes Treasurer Converse said were uncollectible. That is not out of the ordinary. What was out of the ordinary was Exhibit B, which listed everything, listed the names and the amounts to be written off, was not in the board packet. When I finally got it under FOIA law, I understood why it wasn't in the board packet. Mr. DeLuca, in the board packet, they were writing off $15,000 in personal property taxes for your family's business, your father's business. You, in the minimum, should have recused yourself from voting on that. But instead, you all voted on something you didn't even know what you were voting on. Every trustee on this board is guilty of malfeasance. You're voting on things you don't understand, and you're not auditing what you are supposed to be auditing. It is a fiduciary responsibility. Oversight is a fiduciary responsibility. The residents of this township are not getting what they paid for. If you don't want to do the work, resign. But if you do want to stay on the board, at least do your job.
Okay. Any other comments?
Yeah. I didn't know that till tonight. Did Mr. DeLuca know that they were on this Exhibit B? And why was Exhibit B kept out of the thing when you guys voted on it? Why wasn't it put in it instead of being kept out?
I did not see it on, I did not.
In other words, you did not see it? No, you did not know it before?
No, not Exhibit B.
Well, why did Converse keep it out?
I was directed by legal counsel not to put it in there because it had named individuals, and you cannot put names and addresses of individuals.
So Mr. DeLuca did not know he was voting for his parents at that time?
No, sir, and I was not part of that company since '93. I had 0% interest in it, and that was the furthest thing of my mind to even think that could possibly I be voting on something like that. And if that's the case, I know other people within the township with that
No, I'm not bringing that up.
No,
What
I
I'm
understand,
saying
but
is,
I'm just clarifying.
the board didn't even see it. It could have been kept
Yes.
quiet behind the
Exactly.
board lines
Right.
instead of given to the public.
Right.
So you guys knew what you were voting on.
Exactly.
You guys voted on Con versus Word and didn't know what the hell you were doing.
Thank you.
Let me make records clear, because.
And
it
that's
was
not the
said
first
last-
time that stuff's
It was
happened.
said last meeting, and it was not, this motion had nothing about excusing or doing away with the funds. There was nothing in there. Those funds are gone, they cannot be collected.
It's irrelevant.
That's
It's
irrelevant.
irrelevant.
That is irrelevant, that is true. So-
Thank you for telling us
So we're
that.
not talking about the funds, what we're talking about is the records have to be cleaned. Those monies have to be carried
You're
on all
missing
the
it.
school
It's
budgets,
missing
they have to be carried on a county budget, and all they have to be, and this is a court
missing
order
the
that
point.
has to be put in there in order to remove their names from something that is cannot be collected.
You're
If
missing the
Mr.
point.
DeLuca would have known his parents were involved in this deal,
He could have
he
recused himself.
could have refused himself as a vote.
Yes.
He claims right now that he did not know. Why wasn't he notified so he could recluse himself as a vote?
Mr. Converse, by your ruling, they shouldn't be allowed in any closed session because they shouldn't be allowed to know. The trustees are allowed to know what they're
I-
voting on.
Totally understand, and I don't have any problem with what you're saying, but what I was told.
In
I
other
was
words,
given
you're
two
wrong.
files. I was given 2 files by legal counsel, one that went in the board packet and one that did not go in the board packet because that declared, that had exhibit A and B,
No, they just
1
said
and
they
2
never
in
saw
it.
it.
And I
Just
was
said-
advised by legal counsel that I only had to put in the verbiage and not the names. So I have the fallback.
No, that was
That's what I
Ed
have.
telling, Ed told you that, huh?
No, it was Jessica Bonds.
I thought Ed was our legal counsel.
She's my associate.
The other thing,
Yeah.
if I,
Mr.
Better
Supervisor,
talk.
if I could speak. With regard to Mr. DeLuca, I did see the name of the DeLuca company on the tax roll. I specifically inquired to make sure that trustee DeLuca did not have any financial interest in that company. I was advised he did not. Therefore, had Mr. DeLuca seen the name on there and asked me if he could vote, I would have said yes, because he has no financial interest or connection with that company. It does not in any way affect him personally. So it was not in any way improper for him to vote on that matter. Secondly, the writing of off is simply a clearing of the books. It's not saying that we're not writing funds off that the township has a right to collect. The statute of limitations had run on all those claims. In order to be removed off of the tax rolls, it has to be a circuit court action brought and approved by the court, which if the court thinks there's anything irregular, they will question it and not approve it. But that is a procedure, the statutory procedure that has to be followed. It's simply a matter of debt that is not collectible, never will be collectible, and we're writing it off the books with the court's permission. That's all there is to that.
And you are missing the point. The trustees should not be voting on something they don't have in front of them, that they know what they're voting on.
They knew what they were voting on because I presented it to them and it was reviewed by legal
In other
counsel.
words, they all knew
So Mr.
what
DeLuca
Exhibit B
did
was.
So Mr.
They
DeLuca
knew
did know.
that there were names of numerous individuals on there, and I told them that not to disclose to protect the privacy of those individuals, not to release it to the board.
So right now, Mr. DeLuca knew that.
Or should have known.
He knew the names on there before
It
he
doesn't
voted.
matter if he knew.
Well,
or not.
answer,
It's
we'd like to
not-
have an answer, guys.
no, I
It's
didn't,
immaterial.
I personally didn't. But in turn, my vote went based upon non-collectible funds, as it was stated in the motion. That's clearly what I voted on. And I think, not to speak for the rest, but that's in turn, I feel what they voted on, non-collectible funds, regardless.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, thanks for being here tonight. We have some new folks, I'm not gonna put you on the spot, but they just bought some property in the township and are building a new home, and glad that you folks are here, so if you don't get a chance, if you haven't met them yet, make sure you meet them right out there in the front. Thanks for being here tonight. You're welcome to stay.
Take them out to breakfast.
I will. All right, thanks a lot. Have a good night.